Welcome back to J Smokehouse. PTSD. Something that not many of us really like to talk about, but is something we truly do need to talk about. So many could benefit from those of us who have been through PTSD for so long and have learned to at least control it in some way. Now, I do have a previous episode on PTSD, but it was rife with errors from the start. It's terrible quality. My audio is off. It's just not a very good quality video. And if you're curious about my other series and when they're going to start back up, please stay tuned to the end of the video and I will be explaining more on that. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. This is all my own experiences from my own PTSD, and please take it as such. This is not medical advice for any one person. Now, one thing that they really drilled into us, or at least for me specifically, is that I just felt like I would be a coward if I admitted that I had PTSD. And so I never ever admitted to myself that I had any issues. I came home and I was like, you know what? I'm going to show everybody I'm the same carefree person I was. And I was not the same person. Boy, did I go haywire. I mean, I went out of control, thinking I was just showing everybody that I could still be fun and I was still the same person. And I was just alienating people by how outrageous I had become. And like many other veterans or other people with PTSD, I turned to alcohol. It's legal. It's a depressant. I felt like, it made me feel better. It did not. It stoked my anger and it put me into a very depressed state. Yet it was something. And it was legal. I could do it. And so I would drink and I would drink and I would drink. I mean, man, I remember the first time I realized I was drinking way too much. That was when I told someone I was going to get another fifth of whiskey. And they told me why. And then they opened a cabinet and showed me about 5 half-drunk fifths of whiskey. And then they said that these aren't even the 4 that they already threw away. And that was when I was only there about 3 weeks. So I was going through a lot of whiskey. Now, one thing that really exasperated this is everyone else around my age, which was about 20 years old at the time, everyone was going to bars and hanging out and drinking. I mean, that was a staple thing to do. Go out and drink. At this time, cannabis was around, but it was still highly stigmatized. I mean, I wasn't even around it that much at this point. And let me tell you, I was definitely a textbook alcoholic. I really was. If anybody even suggested to me that I would stop drinking, I would fly off the hinges. I really would. And it wasn't until the best friend in my life who stuck through me through thick and thin, he actually suggested to me, he said, I have some cannabis, go ahead and have a hit. Now, all my life, I bought into the stigma and the stereotype of cannabis. I thought if I tried cannabis, I would be a heroin addict by the day's end. So it successfully worked the prohibition on cannabis, at least on me specifically, especially with my family who was very, very against cannabis. But he allowed me to take a hit. And I took maybe 2 or 3 hits. And let me tell you, it was the first time that my mind slowed down without me even trying to think about it. It was so relieving. I can't explain it. I mean, it was so nice. I just started talking to him about this one thing. We sat down and I thought we were talking for about 4 hours. And I looked at my watch and it had been 15 minutes that we had been talking. I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, I feel like we've been talking for 4 hours. And he definitely laughed at me at that point. Now, that was one of my favorite days. I remember it so well. I remember it better than a lot of days because I was so calm and it was so relieving. I couldn't believe it. However, if you're trying to get jobs, at least at the time, you could not get a job doing cannabis. Everywhere drug tested for marijuana. And so it was very difficult to get a job. So I did not continue cannabis. However, I had heard, because right around this time, K2, if you haven't heard of it, it's synthetic cannabinoids or spice. And that became very popular. Then everyone was telling me it was called synthetic marijuana that won't show up on drug tests. And I was like, awesome. I can do marijuana and not pop hot on drug tests. Let me tell you something. These are so dangerous, at least for me. They became so addictive. And I mean, I have become a borderline addict now because of, and I will go into that later, but I have not experienced something nearly as bad as the synthetic spice. I mean, it was on par with some very hard drugs. It really was. But I was smoking this stuff like crazy because I thought, oh, it's legal. I can just do as much as I want. And oh man, I went off the deep end with this stuff. It was very bad. If I didn't have it, I was borderline addict. Like I said, I would do anything to get some more. And then the authorities caught wind of it. Now, it did switch a couple of times to different names and different chemical makeups. That way it could remain legal. However, they kept catching it and kept making it illegal. And I'm very happy that they did. I do not want that stuff on the street. I really don't. I do not like it. I do not like 100% synthetic cannabinoids, or at least not to be regulated. So when I was unable to acquire the K2 or the spice anymore, I started looking to more accessible, more harder drugs. And it got pretty bad. I delved into a dark, dark place. Then I had some loved ones who decided to try to do an intervention on me. It was the wrong thing to do, especially the people who did it. It was not the right time, and it was not necessarily the right people. And one of these loved ones, I love them to death. But this night, I was ready to, it's just where I was. It's so hard to explain. They had made me so angry that I grabbed them, and if they had moved even a muscle, I would have rained down everything I had. However, very, very happily, they did not move. But instead, I just went to a steel door and bashed it in as much as I could with my fist, which inevitably, as I'm sure you've guessed, destroyed my hand. It turned two of the bones in my hand almost into crumbling dust, is what I was told. It was bad. This is when I was told I needed to get to the VA. So I did. I went to the VA and I found out that I definitely had PTSD. I had issues I was bottling up and I was controlling them with bad substances. Now, this wasn't the end. I mean, the VA helped. They really did. They helped me to figure out what I needed. But there are certain things that just did not help me, and actually the opposite helped me. Certain things with therapy. Now, I know therapy can help many people, but for me specifically, at least what was being told to me in therapy was really conflicting me in my mind. It was tearing me asunder. It really was. And for me specifically, it was being told that it wasn't my fault. Now, many people with PTSD, it truly is not their fault, and they really do not need to feel that way. However, the stuff that really affected me the most, I know there is some free will involved. I mean, it's not like someone else grabbed my hands to do what happened. So for me specifically, I actually had to admit to myself that I did do wrong, and that's where I was actually able to forgive myself. But while I was telling myself that I didn't do anything wrong, it was really, really conflicting with me. Now, I'm not going to go into any more. I don't want to try to make it seem like I am trying to give anybody therapy advice. I'm not. I'm only telling you what specifically helped me and my specific PTSD. And then there was the medications that were prescribed. I mean, benzos over benzos over benzos. It almost seemed like it was trying to zombify me. It really did. The sad thing is sometimes it would just numb my mind. And there were thoughts there, but I just could not get to them. However, they were still affecting me. I would sweat from anger and I wouldn't really understand why. Or dream inhibitors. I would wake up so angry from my dream, but I could not remember my dream. And I did not like that. I'd much rather understand what was going on rather than not. And so there are just certain things. I mean, the medications. I mean, there was so much. And at first, I took them as needed. I mean, at first I took them as they said, it would say a certain amount to take daily at certain times. However, it started to say, or take as needed. So I started to take as needed. The sad thing is that I really didn't need to take as needed. I just felt that way. And I didn't understand myself. I didn't understand the feelings that were going on inside of me. And I just thought, numb it. And so I would just keep taking pills after pills, numb it. Then when you run out of your medications before your refill date, you can't get a refill. And that's where things started to take a really dark turn again. I started looking for those hard drugs as soon as I ran out of pills. I realized I can't wait. I can't wait. And my mind would just go there. I'd be like, I need anything that can help me in this situation. Now, I will say, I do not believe that I became a full-blown addict. I mean, I think it would have been a lot more difficult for me to get off of it. However, trust me, I was very, very close. Now, luckily, I did have a friend and a couple of family members that did not give up on me. So it did not become too awfully bad. But it would have been if my best friend, the best friend I've ever had in my whole life, if he hadn't shown up in the nick of time. I was in a very bad spot. And I was ready to end it. I was conflicted. I really did not want to, but I didn't feel like I had another choice. And there were a lot of things that were affecting my mind in bad ways. And he just happened to show up. And he just happened to have some cannabis on him. And he saw my state. However, he did not sit there and coddle me. He did not make me feel good about myself. He immediately went in on me. He told me how terrible of a person I would have been if I had done what I was thinking. He let me know how selfish I was. He let me know that I was only thinking about my own personal feelings. He started telling me, what about this person? What about that person? And then he said the one thing, he said, what about me? I would have been the one to find you, and I would have been devastated. I would have been in a state much like you if you had done that. Now, he did not say that last part, but let me tell you, that's how I felt. And it was hard to hear. It tore me apart inside. It's hard to talk about right now, but it did. It tore me apart. But it's what made me realize how selfish of thoughts I was having then, and how what I was doing was terrible for myself, for the people around me, what was going on. And he said, I want you to smoke this cannabis. I don't care. You don't even have a job right now. You're unemployed. You're not worried about looking for a job right now. I'll take care of you. And he did. He was at my house almost daily. He really was. And it might have ruined a lot of stuff in his personal life, but he did. He took care of me. But he got me smoking on cannabis again. And that is what I really want people to understand. Now, cannabis is not for everybody. And just like any medication, don't expect it to just fix you. It's not just going to be like, I can smoke cannabis and everything will be right as rain. It's not. I actually did not understand it, and it actually did not help me as much as I wanted to admit. I kept saying how much it was helping me, but it really wasn't helping me as much as I wanted to admit. But, oh my goodness, it freed my mind. It freed my mind. It gave me calm. It made me realize the awful feelings those other drugs are giving me. Now, It was not easy. I wanted to go back to those other drugs quite a few times, but he really helped me. If it wasn't for him, I would have never stuck with it. It's not like cannabis was the end all be all, and it still is not. Cannabis is a very small building block into the things that have helped me with my PTSD. But it was that thing that really opened up my mind. I started smoking cannabis exclusively. He was getting me some, he was keeping me from those harder drugs. And I have to tell you, it saved my life. It really did. Now, at first, I smoked as much as I could to dull my senses. I really did. I smoked so much cannabis. And now I can smoke probably that much and be okay now. But when you first start, you really don't have a tolerance. It takes very little to get you to that quote unquote high state. I was smoking about maybe an ounce a week. And that is a lot. That is a lot for someone who just starts, let me tell you. But I was, and I kept moving up. I kept smoking more and more and more. It was dulling my senses just like the drugs. Not as much and not as powerfully, but that's what I was trying to use it for. And that was my mistake. And my friend did not want to push me. I see it now. He did not want to push me too hard. He realized, there were a lot of times where he talked to me about it and I would say, it's all I need. It's all I need. And he realized I would regress if he took it away. And luckily he saw that, he recognized it, and he stopped pushing. However, he never ceased to let me know how concerned he was that I was only using it to dull my senses. Now I'm going to go ahead and stop here for today's episode. Next episode, I'm going to move into how I got my cannabis use under control, the things that helped me, and the other catalysts other than cannabis. Now, as I promised, I'm going to talk about my history series and my cannabinoid series. I am going to continue them. However, I'm putting them on a hiatus for a little bit. And if you have a story to tell, but don't really want people to know who you are, please let me know, and I'll give you a platform to let people know without knowing who you are. You can find ways to contact me in the description of my videos. Now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on the video if you liked it or you learned anything or anything was helpful to you. And now, as always, Jay is going to go smoke a J.